Life often presents us with unexpected twists, moments of kindness that echo and transform into something far greater than we could imagine. Who would have thought that a simple act of compassion in a bustling supermarket could lead to such an unusual night? For a young soldier, it would have been just another day, but fate had other plans. Have you ever wondered what happens when selfless kindness meets recognition in its most enigmatic form? And how a seemingly insignificant act of generosity can open doors to a world of possibilities never before conceived? The answer, for Sergeant Ethan Riley, a resident of a quiet community on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina, was about to unfold in a way he would never forget. It was a typical Thursday afternoon at the local Harvest Foods. Ethan, in his army fatigues, pushed a half-empty cart, his mind already on the next morning's duties at the base. In the checkout line ahead of him, an elderly man struggled to find his wallet, his hands trembling and his face flushed with embarrassment. It was Arthur "Art" Vance, a Korean War veteran, whose dignity seemed to be crumbling under the impatient gaze of other customers. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm yet gentle. "Don't worry about it, sir," he said, extending his credit card. "It's on me." The relief on Art's face was palpable, a glimmer of gratitude in his tired eyes. He thanked Ethan profusely, shaking his hand with surprising strength for his age. Hours later, Ethan's routine was abruptly interrupted. Twilight was already spreading over the neighborhood when 3 black SUVs with tinted windows silently pulled up and parked in front of his modest house. Curiosity and a pang of apprehension washed over him. Who were these unexpected visitors? The driver of the middle car, a man in an impeccable suit with a serious demeanor, exited and walked toward Ethan's door, an envelope in his hands. What seemed like a simple gesture at the supermarket had, in some way, triggered a sequence of events that promised to change Ethan's life in unimaginable ways, leading him to a crossroads between duty and the unknown. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. 3 suits, an envelope. The scene was straight out of a movie. The man in front, with his thin glasses and an expression that betrayed no emotion, extended the envelope. "Sergeant Riley," he said, his voice deep and inflectionless. "My name is Wallace Thorne, and I am Mr. Arthur Vance's attorney." Ethan took the envelope, feeling the weight of the letterhead. Thorne continued, "Mr. Vance was deeply touched by your gesture today. He insists on expressing his gratitude in a particular way." The word "particular" hung in the air, laden with a mystery Ethan couldn't decipher. The other 2 men, equally silent and rigid in posture, remained by the SUVs, watching him intently. What could Art Vance possibly want? And why did the presence of Thorne and his companions evoke such a strange feeling? Opening the envelope, Ethan found a single, richly engraved card with an unknown emblem and an address. Below it, a single typed line. "You are invited to a thank-you dinner. Saturday, 7 p.m. Formal attire." There was no phone number, no other details. It was a summons, not an invitation. "Mr. Vance expects your presence," Thorne added, before turning and re-entering the SUV. The vehicles disappeared as quickly as they arrived, leaving Ethan in the dim light, holding the card and a mind buzzing with questions. That simple act of charity had transformed into something far more complex and intriguing. The following days were filled with speculation for Ethan. He researched Arthur Vance but found very little information, only a few military service records and an obscure mention of a successful career in strategic consulting. This only deepened the enigma. On Saturday night, dressed in his best dress uniform, the only formal attire he owned, Ethan drove to the indicated address. The property was isolated in a wooded area an hour from Charleston, an imposing classical mansion, softly lit to highlight its grandeur. As he approached the wrought iron gate, it opened silently, as if expecting him. The main door was opened by an impeccable housekeeper, who led him to a luxurious living room with a lit fireplace and artwork on the walls. Art Vance sat in a leather armchair, a glass of brandy in his hand. Beside him, to Ethan's surprise, was Wallace Thorne, accompanied by an elegant, gray-haired woman with a warm smile. "Sergeant Riley, so glad you came," Art said, a cunning smile on his face. "Allow me to introduce Eleanor Vance, my wife, and Wallace, whom you already know." The dinner conversation was peculiar. They discussed Ethan's military life, his aspirations, but Art and Eleanor revealed little about themselves, beyond musings about complex ventures and unconventional solutions. The subtle tension in the air was almost palpable, and Ethan felt like a pawn in a larger game he didn't understand. After dessert, Art caught Ethan's attention. "Sergeant, your act of kindness was not just a courtesy," Art began, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "It was a test of character, of integrity. And you passed with flying colors." Ethan frowned, curiosity mixed with a hint of distrust. A test. What was Art Vance talking about? What would come next? And how could a simple favor at the supermarket have led to something so elaborate? A tense silence filled the room, only the gentle crackle of the fireplace breaking the quiet. Ethan felt Art Vance and Eleanor's penetrating gaze upon him, a veiled expectation in their expressions. "A test, sir?" Ethan finally asked, his voice maintaining a professional neutrality, but with a trace of genuine curiosity. "I don't understand." Art tilted his head, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Compassion, Sergeant Riley, is a rare virtue these days, especially in its purest form. Many see the need, few act, and even fewer do so without seeking something in return." Eleanor Vance, in her soft voice, interjected. "Arthur always had a special talent for identifying talent, Ethan. He observes, evaluates, and when he finds what he's looking for, he acts." The reference to identifying talent, and the almost conspiratorial tone of their words further intrigued Ethan's mind. What exactly were they talking about? What kind of talent was Art Vance looking for? And why had a soldier's life in Charleston crossed paths with that of a man with an isolated mansion and silent lawyers? Art took a cigar from a mahogany box and lit it, exhaling aromatic smoke into the air. "Our organization deals with delicate situations," he explained, the smoke slightly obscuring his face, adding an enigmatic air. "Problems that require unconventional solutions, and people with an unwavering sense of duty and morals. People like you, Sergeant." He paused, his gaze fixed on Ethan. "The world is full of hidden challenges, threats few even imagine. We work in the shadows to mitigate these risks, and for that we need the best." The proposition, or what seemed to be one, was audacious, almost surreal. Art Vance was offering Ethan an opportunity that seemed plucked from a spy novel, an invitation to a world he never knew existed. What would he do with this offer? Would he embrace the unknown or return to the predictability of his military life? Ethan's decision would lead him down a path he never imagined, to a world where the line between right and wrong was thin and the stakes were always high. 7 days. The deadline hung over Ethan like a silent ultimatum. He tried to focus on his duties at the base, but the image of that secluded mansion and Art Vance's enigmatic words churned in his mind. He spent sleepless nights, the encrypted tablet resting on his nightstand like a heavy secret. Ethan's curiosity was an uncontrollable force. He found himself imagining what kind of undetectable threats existed, and what his role in combating them would be. Military life, once his safe harbor, now seemed monotonous and predictable compared to the vast unknown Art had presented him. On the 5th day, the decision was made. Ethan knew he couldn't go back to his old life without regretting not exploring this unique opportunity. He picked up the tablet, feeling the cold texture of the metal under his fingers. With a deep sigh, he activated the device. The screen lit up, revealing a minimalist interface. Just a discrete logo and the option "Confirm Interest." As he touched the screen, a complex map appeared, with a blinking in the center of a vast desert in Arizona. Below it, a single line of text. "Your journey begins at Fort Huachuca tomorrow at dawn. There is no turning back after this point." Fort Huachuca, a remote military installation known for its history in intelligence and secret operations. The choice of location seemed like a nod to his own military background, a bridge between the world he knew and what he was about to discover. Ethan knew he was sealing his fate. This wasn't just a new job, it was a new life, a total immersion in a universe of shadows and secrets. He packed only the essentials, leaving behind his uniform and his memories of life as Sergeant Riley. What awaited him at Fort Huachuca? What kind of training would he face? And, more importantly, who were Arthur and Eleanor Vance, really, and what was the true nature of this organization operating on the fringes of society? Ethan's adventure was just beginning, and he knew that every step would lead him deeper into a mystery that could redefine his very identity. The road to Fort Huachuca wound through arid landscapes, under a sky that gradually lightened. Ethan drove in silence, the tablet secure on the passenger seat. The rising sun painted the Arizona mountains in shades of orange and purple, a stunning backdrop that contrasted with the uncertainty he felt. As he approached the military base gates, there were no guards, no checkpoints. The gate, rusty and seemingly abandoned, stood ajar, like a silent invitation to the unknown. He followed the tablet's coordinates, which led him to an isolated hangar on the outskirts of the base. It was an old corrugated metal structure that looked like it had withstood decades of weathering. As he parked, the hangar door slowly opened, revealing not the dusty interior he expected, but a metal platform descending into a dark pit. A robotic, emotionless voice echoed through the hangar. Identification confirmed. "Welcome, Sergeant Riley. Please step onto the platform." Ethan hesitated for a brief moment, but the fire of curiosity and the promise of a greater purpose propelled him forward. He drove the car onto the platform, feeling a shiver down his spine as the daylight disappeared above him. The descent was smooth but seemed endless. When it finally stopped, the doors opened to a vast modern underground complex, illuminated by cool white lights. It was a hidden world, a fortress of technology and secrets. Wallace Thorne awaited him, his face as impassive as ever. Beside him, a team of technicians in white lab coats worked silently at glowing panels. "Sergeant Riley," Thorne said without preamble, "welcome to the Covert Vigilance Foundation. Here, the shadows are our battlefield, and discretion is our greatest weapon." The Covert Vigilance Foundation. The name itself was a mystery, a premonition of even greater challenges and secrets. Ethan knew his life as Sergeant Riley had ended, and a new identity was about to be forged in the depths of that facility. What kind of training awaited him? And what shadows did the Covert Vigilance Foundation aim to combat? The Covert Vigilance Foundation's underground complex was a labyrinth of polished corridors and high-tech laboratories, a silent testament to the power and reach of Artvance's organization. Ethan was led by Thorne through biometric security doors and illuminated tunnels, each step taking him further from his former life. He was brought to a preparation room, where tactical uniforms of dark gray, devoid of insignia, awaited him. "Your training begins now, Sergeant Riley," Thorne informed him, his voice echoing in the metallic walls. "Here, you are no longer a U.S. Army soldier. You are a Foundation agent. Your skills will be honed, and your perceptions expanded." The following months were an intense blur of learning and transformation. Ethan underwent a training regimen that far surpassed anything he had experienced in the Army. He learned advanced hand-to-hand combat techniques from martial arts masters of diverse backgrounds, mastered the use of state-of-the-art weaponry that seemed straight out of science fiction movies, and went through simulations of highly complex tactical scenarios. However, the most challenging training was not physical but mental. He was instructed in espionage, counterintelligence, cyber warfare, and the subtle art of information manipulation. The Covert Vigilance Foundation operated at a level of secrecy that would make the CIA seem like an open book. He met other Foundation agents, men and women of various nationalities and backgrounds, all with a similar gleam of dedication and a past shrouded in mystery. There was Kaito, a former hacker from Japan with a brilliant mind for technology, and Anya, an infiltration and disguise specialist from Russia, whose eyes held deep secrets. They were an unlikely family, forged under the oath to protect the world from threats the public would never know. One day, during a briefing in the command center, Artvance appeared on the giant screen that dominated the room. His voice, now deeper and more serious, filled the air. "Agents," he began, "our world is on the cusp of a new era of conflict. These are not nations against nations, but shadowy entities operating across borders, seeking to destabilize global order. Our next mission is critical, and will demand the utmost from each of you." Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. All the months of training, all the isolation, everything was about to be tested. He looked at Kaito and Anya, a silent understanding passing between them. The Covert Vigilance Foundation was not just an organization. It was a line of defense. And Ethan, the soldier who paid for a veteran's groceries, was now at the forefront of an invisible war. That simple act of compassion had led to an extraordinary journey, where the fate of the world, somehow, now rested on his shoulders and those of his new companions. Life would never be the same, and the future, though uncertain, promised challenges that only the bravest could face. If you feel as intrigued as Ethan by this world of secrets and invisible heroism, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the Covert Vigilance Foundation's next missions and dive with us into more stories of courage and mystery.